So far, we've tried to understand where presentations come from and what some basic do's and don'ts are when it comes to actually making a presentation. However, you have to understand that a presentation can be segregated into different kinds. In order to decide what kind of presentation you need to make, you have to understand what your message and your main purpose is. Firstly, you have to decide what your main message is. What is the single biggest idea that is driving your entire presentation? What do you want to be the biggest takeaway for your audience? After you have identified what your main message is, you have to decide what your purpose is. What do you want to do? Do you want to give a concept that you want people to accept? Do you want to convince people to accept your idea? Do you want to tell a story? Or do you want to teach them something? Do you want to make it an educative experience? All three of these are things that will help you decide what your presentations look like. Let's take a look at them in detail. The first kind is the story. When you try to show a sequence of events, happenings, or a series of experiences, basically a journey or learning that you have undergone, this kind of presentation is called the story. The story is typically covered by the hero's arc or the hero's journey. Basically, you talk about you or where you have begun, how the journey has started, at what point did it prompt, what were the critical turning points that led to several decisions or changes, what were the problems you ran into and how you tried to resolve them, what was the high point of your entire journey, what was the highlight, and finally at the end of the journey, obviously you emerge a changed person. What was the wisdom gained? What were the changes you got? And what do you intend to share with the world? This is a typical storytelling structure that is very normal for the story. This is something that you will see from superhero movies to classics to even best-selling authors. And this format basically ensures that readers are hooked from the very beginning to the end. One such example is the story of Eddie Jaku, a Holocaust survivor but today considered the happiest man on earth. His TED Talk is one of the most viewed because of the manner in which he covered his entire experience from a Jew who survived the Holocaust to a man who has managed to find happiness today in the Western world. Now, the second kind of presentation is called the pitch. What is a pitch? A pitch is something that basically you present to a bunch of people when you are trying to convince them towards backing a particular idea. People can either back it by giving it their support, acting accordingly, adopting the idea, or giving you money to actually commercialize it. How do you make a pitch? There are several ways to make a pitch happen. Sometimes there are some ways in which storytelling itself is involved. However, a typical pitch generally consists of a context. You basically have to create a need and then define what your problem or your opportunity is. This is where your storytelling comes in. This is where you make it relatable to people. And then, after you have told them what the problem or the opportunity is, you create a solution. You create your ideas. You tell them what it is that you intend to propose for this. After you've put your solution across, you now need to make your solution implementable and attractive. So what does it take for your solution to be implemented? What does it take for it to be actually applied? What support do you need? All of those are things you outline logistically, financially, timeline wise, everything. After which, you now create a call to action. You either ask them to adopt your solution, or you ask them to lend you support, or you ask them to lend you funds. All of these are things that are defining factors of a pitch. The pitch is one of the most common ways that are used by inventors and creators or startup founders to gain backing for their ideas. Businesses often introduce new products or new designs using a pitch. For example, Acer, Samsung, Apple, all of them use pitches to introduce new products every single time they come up with an innovation. Individuals and businesses also make pitches in order to make their ideas and ventures attractive to other people. Now, one common place where you often see this is in the famous TV show called Shark Tank, where investors are often presented with a series of pitches by young inventors and business people and entrepreneurs asking for money. The third kind of presentation is called the lecture. A lecture is where a certain concept or a topic is basically elaborated in detail. Now, the main idea behind a lecture is to teach you something, which means the more structured you are in the manner in which you present your topic, the better it is. Sometimes the lecture is often mixed with the story in order to make it attractive to the audience. But the typical structure of a lecture is you introduce a topic, you define the main parts of the topic, what it is that people intend to learn or what they should be getting at the end of it. Then you go into every part by naming it, elaborating it, and giving an example. After which, you summarize and conclude the entire lesson. To make each of these interesting sometimes, storytelling is often used as a tool to give examples. One such example is TED's video where Pratik Singh basically explains how an economic bubble works, one example being the tulips of Holland. So now, what you can do is think about what kind of presentation you need for each type of topic. And now would be a good time for you to think about which teaching format, which presentation format has been used to teach you this particular topic.